Always remember.
We're here at Fan Expo Denver Day 4 with Star Wars legend Timothy Zahn. Thank you so much for sitting down with us. We've got some questions for you about your work, about Star Wars in general.
You've expressed you actually have a very heavy background in physics when you started working on the original trilogy, and have expressed that in very epic space battles and starship battles. So simply put, what are your 3 favorite starships in Star Wars?
Third, probably X-Wing.
Okay.
I like the logic of splitting the weapons and engines a bit apart so one shot can't take out both of them. Right. Second is Millennium Falcon, just because. My favorite is always going to be the Star Destroyer, though.
Wow.
Because the arrowhead shape means you can essentially deliver a broadside straight forward from both sides of the ship.
Yeah.
I like the logic of that as well.
I had a feeling you would say Star Destroyer, and personally it's in my top 5. So
I was going to ask, you said in your panel earlier this weekend, the delineation of when you were approached for the new Thrawn trilogy, how you were excited because they basically said, hey, all that other stuff, you don't have to worry about it. You can kind of go at it at your own for those 3.
All the stuff that had been done about the Chiss.
Yes, exactly. I just wanted to know if while writing that sort of prequel to where we see him in Heir to the Empire, where you brought him back, how much of Thrawn's backstory did you have in mind for that? And do you see a delineation between Legends and canon for him, or is it kind of the same character for you?
It's the same character, just in different political, military environments. In the early trilogies, time-wise, he's under authority by somebody. He cannot do everything he wants. In the original Thrawn trilogy, he is the one in charge. Does not have to deal with politics, so you don't see the kind of weakness that is in him. What was the other part of the question?
Do you see any sort of split, or was the Heir to the Empire Thrawn kind of
No, it's the same. It's the same character.
Gotcha. Perfect.
Well, that leads me into the next question. Is you've said before that Vader leads through fear, and Thrawn leads through loyalty.
Correct.
And my favorite character that you created is Mara Jade. And while she's not necessarily a leader in the traditional sense maybe that Vader and Thrawn are, she definitely has her own motivations and driving forces. What would you say drives her?
Well, I see her as an experiment by Palpatine. She's not a Sith who can concerned about overthrowing him or replacing whatever. She's not a dark Jedi. She is someone who he is firmly convinced is doing the right thing. And in many ways she is. She's rooting out corruption and treason in this empire which she believes in. So he has someone who is good and is not seeing herself as doing anything wrong, but yet he is manipulating her into doing his will. So her motivation is the defense of the system, which she truly believes is good. And in local areas, it probably is. Somebody asked me once, would I be on the rebel side or the imperial side? I said, it depends on how well things are running under the empire at my location. Because if the government is doing a good job of keeping the peace, keeping us well-fed, keeping the bad guys away, I'm probably for the government. It's where that starts collapsing, you start building rebels. And that's how people generally in the history of humanity have seen things.
Absolutely. Kind of a fun question. You said earlier this weekend that, and people have said it all the time, kind of the same mentality that Thrawn has to somebody like a Sherlock Holmes. Is there a comic book character that would make a good chess 1v1 for Thrawn?
Many years ago at a convention, we had a panel that was a super villain smackdown. Started with 8 villains from comics, TV, movies, books, and wound down to 2. And it ended up with Thrawn versus Lex Luthor. The other 3 panelists said who they thought would win. And it got to me. And I said, they won't fight. Thrawn will try to see if there's common ground, if he can recruit Luthor into find some common ground, find something we can agree with. I can always kill him later, but it's a resource. Right. Let's see if we can use him without destroying it in the process.
Yeah.
So that is Thrawn's mentality on the chess. If the game is just a game and reality is something else, let's try to win the reality, not the game.
Lex Luthor was who we were thinking as well, so that's good. It worked around that way.
Another similar question to the Starship one. You've also have some pretty significant creatures in your debut trilogy with the Isla Miri, which is one of my favorites, and then the Vornskir. So what are your 3 favorite creatures in Star Wars?
Favorite creatures?
Favorite creatures, yeah.
In classic, not my own, I like the Vornskirs.
Yeah,
you can pick your own. Yeah, totally fine.
Isalamiri are a good game balance thing. You talk about game balance of you don't want one character or one thing to be super powerful.
Yeah.
That's one reason why when I created Cortosis ore that would you couldn't cut it with a lightsaber because at that point everything would be cut.
Right.
What I did was have when the blade hits it, it sends a feedback that shuts down the lightsaber.
Yeah.
So you can cut it. It just takes 1,000 millimeter size cuts to get through.
Yeah.
And I deliberately made that frangible so you can't make armor out of it. It just disintegrates like mica or something like that. And I remember chatting with Pablo Hidalgo. We were talking about the one of the future books, and he mentioned someone had done an armor thing, and I said I made it so you can't make armor directly. And his comment was, and we appreciated that.
Yeah.
Because Pablo, coming out of a gaming background, understands game balance.
Yes.
So that is something you always want, and that was something Isalamiri provided. They don't block the Force, which is what Thrawn assumed.
Yes.
But they lower it to the level where Jedi can't access it, and more importantly, it wouldn't have the resonance between clones that keeps them from being grown too quickly.
That was actually going to be my question, is because I think there was a big critique, from what I understand back in the day, of like, oh, it blocks the Force. That's not how it should work. But I always assumed it was, like you said, it dampens it to a specific level.
You see in that book, Vornskir's hunting through the Force.
Yes.
So clearly they are not destroying
Right.
it.
They've adapted over time. And we were talking about as well that the Islamari still very much fits into the current stratosphere of Star Wars, because we see in Clone Wars, the Mandalorians, well, it's not Islamiri, they have the kind of the Force dampening cells to use for Maul.
Correct.
And of course, we get the Islamiri in the background of Rebels in Thrawn's office. I would love to see them return. And then this is kind of a simple question. People ask you probably all the time. But for someone who wants to get into Star Wars and Star Wars literature, for your contributions, where do they start?
You can start with Heir to the Empire, the original Thrawn trilogy. That's a good one if you like the movie characters and want the follow-up to the classic movies. You can start with Thrawn, the Imperial trilogy, Thrawn arriving the Empire, height of Imperial power, good backstory, introduction to Thrawn, who he is and such. Hooks into the Rebel timeline, though you don't have to have seen the Rebels.
Yeah.
If you like world building, go to the Ascendancy trilogy, where I get to build the Chiss culture from the ground up, as well as having Thrawn kicking butt and taking names, protecting the Ascendancy.
Yeah, that's a great answer.
And any of the 3 can be read basically in any order. The trilogies are linked, but there shouldn't be any place where you're thinking, I'm missing something important by reading this one instead of that one first.
Well, I'm actually going to ask a bonus question here as well. Is you wrote a lot of books beyond the original Thrawn trilogy, the Mara Jade duology, Hand of Thrawn duology. Does that same principle kind of apply? Like, I finished the Thrawn trilogy and I was like, man, I really like Mara. Would you recommend me going to the duology, or would you recommend?
Well, the duology follows the original trilogy, so you probably should read those next after Heir to the Empire, Dark Force Rising, Last Command.
Perfect.
Allegiance and Choices of One are Between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. Those can be read pretty much any order. Outbound Flight and Survivor's Quest are a linked duology written in opposite order, 50 years apart. So those you could read probably without the original, though you're going to wonder why Luke and Mara are hanging out at this point.
Right. Yeah.
And then Scoundrels is Solo's 11, but they wouldn't let me call it that.
Yeah.
That's a simple heist. If you've seen the original movies, you're good to go on that one.
Yeah.
Perfect.
We've heard you talk a lot about in interviews, you brought it up this weekend, about Leland Chee saying that everything in Star Wars is somebody's favorite
Yes.
Star Wars. Just for us, we've always wanted to know, what's your favorite Star Wars?
I see it so much as an ensemble. I'm not sure
Yeah.
I could pick out a given thing.
Yeah.
I will tell you the things that impressed me, the two things in A New Hope, which I watched probably 17, 18 times in the theater when it first came out.
Yes.
The first was the Star Destroyer coming overhead, and it kept coming and kept coming. And that was the first time in a movie I'd ever had a sense of size.
Yeah.
Even 2001 and the Discovery, no. It was the Star Destroyer that just kept coming. And by the time the engines appeared, I knew these guys know what they're doing. They've given me that opening. And the second thing that really jarred me was the cantina. Not all the aliens, but Obi-Wan going like that between old man suddenly to warrior.
Right.
Just that second and a half or whatever it took to deal with two guys.
Yeah. Right.
And suddenly this is not just an old guy out in the desert. This is a true warrior.
Absolutely.
And that was my second jolt of that movie.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. That was our final question. Before we end, this isn't a question, but on behalf of both of us, we constantly talk about your work. Yeah, all the time.
Well,
There's not a day that goes by or a week that goes by where we don't go, well, what do you think he was thinking in this moment? We've countless hours speaking about the work that you've created.
Well,
so
thank you
for your contributions.
One final correction. You called me a legend earlier. In the DVD for season 3 of Rebels, they have a bit of an interview with me when they brought me into Skywalker Ranch to the Lucasfilm Presidio to tell me Thrawn was coming into canon. So because that's in the Blu-ray, I'm not a legend. I'm canon.
You are right. You are right.
Yes.
We will plead the fifth there.
Yeah, you are absolutely. No gold banner needed there.
There you go.
Thank you so much for your time, and as always, may the Force be with you.
And with you.
Always remember.